Hello and welcome back to the Tiberium Armory series. I am Game Master Karakin, and today we are going to be talking about the Spector tank, the artillery vehicle. Now, back when I had Command & Conquer Tiberium Wars, when it came out, I didn't ever end up getting the expansion, for one reason or another, and I never really got to use this particular vehicle. Actually, I haven't even finished the last mission of Cain's Wrath. When I had started playing it, I was rusty enough that I couldn't get into it without spending a great deal of time kind of working myself back up. So addressing this has been interesting. It's one of those that I didn't actually know all that much about. Well, to start off with, the Spector is a Nod stealth artillery vehicle that came in Cain's Wrath, and it is piloted by a single person with its chassis about the size of an M1 Abrams tank. It is understood or labeled as a artillery tank, but is more accurately identified as a self-propelled artillery vehicle. Now, to start off with here, I'm sure that there are many people in the audience who are familiar with what this is, but for people who aren't, a self-propelled artillery vehicle is equipped with its own propulsion system to move it to its firing position. This could be a self-propelled gun, a howitzer, self-propelled mortar, or rocket artillery. They are high mobility vehicles using continuous tracks to carrying either a large field gun, howitzer, mortar, or some form of rocket or missile. They are usually used for long-range indirect bombardment support on the battlefield. Modern equivalents are the AS-90s, made by the Brits, the 2S-99 M2 Mistas of the Russian Army, and a Panzerhaubitze 2000 of the German Army. The confusion of the designation in the name comes from modern self-propelled artillery vehicles, often mounting their main gun on a turret on tracked chassis, so they kind of resemble tanks, although they are so lightly armored that they're unable to withstand direct fire from combat, from missiles, or from other enemy armor. Some of the very first instances of artillery like this being used were in the 17th century with early types of horse artillery. In World War II and in World War I, various vehicles on both sides, such as the British gun carrier Mark I, German Wespe, or Soviet ISU-152 heavy assault guns, were deployed in support roles on the battlefield. There they were used for great effect. There may not be many people in the audience who have experienced this sort of thing in direct memory, so take an example of a game of World of Tanks where you have the artillery in the back following the communications of forward tanks to lay in effective ground fire from dozens of kilometers away. Some of the modern pieces in mobile howitzers, such as the G652 155mm G6 howitzer, can fire up to 6 rounds in quick succession that will land nearly simultaneously. This means you could have several vehicles across a wide area who all fire nearly at the same time to hit an area in unison, carrying that shock and awe effect across the battlefield. Now, the Spector does this, but even more. One of the previous videos I did was about the Juggernaut, GDI's impressive artillery walker, which uses 3 200mm long-range cannons to cover the battlefield with a constant fusillade of fire. The Spector has a sort of reverse take on this. Instead of gathering in large groups and firing a constant fusillade of fire with average 150 to 200mm cannons, there's instead stealth across battlefiels into the back lines and scatter in forests and wastes hidden behind their stealth fields. They fire a single 300mm naval cannon, that weapon, so powerful that it is able to take entire structures down by itself. Not in game, but in theory. One of these large rounds hits the middle of an apartment building, the entire thing goes down. One of these things hits a Predator tank, the entire thing is vaporized. There's not much in the game itself that can beat this in terms of pure firepower. The most deadly part about it is, in fact, its confounding nature. In behind the front line by carryall transports, these large groups of vehicles disperse into incredibly inhospitable and difficult to traverse battlefields and hide for sometimes upwards of weeks before an assignment comes down to them, and they fire in unison to destroy huge sections of enemy bases or entire tank columns. The Spectre then melts back into the shadows, and as the GDI sends its orcas and other recon teams to go look for them, they just sit comfortably back and wait for their next opportunity. One drawback about this particular vehicle is that it is a very large caliber, which doesn't sound like a drawback at first, but it is when you consider that it has very few individual shots it can fire before it needs to be resupplied. Meaning there is some risk of discovery if it needs to be resupplied via helicopter or carryall in the field. For instance, if BDI radar picks up that a carryall has dropped something off in the middle of a wasteland, there was a recently recorded shot lobbed at one of their bases, they know that for within a certain vicinity there is a Spectre tank, and they can send out groups of APCs and pit bulls to track them down, leading to an especially deadly cat and mouse game, especially when shadow teams are embedded in the area to help defend the Spectre tanks. All in all, the Spectre is an incredibly powerful glass cannon that, if used correctly, can change the entire face of a battlefield. At the end here, I'd like to take a second to thank everyone who voted in the last post. We got like 10 votes more than last time, which is pretty cool. And I am getting further up there in the sub count, which is also pretty cool. I hope everyone enjoys the video, and I am next up going to be making a video about Lehman Russ from 40K versus the Predator tank, which I hope will be a very interesting video for all and might get some of the people from 40K in here to share in the fun. Thank you all for watching. This is Game Master Karrakin here, and I am signing off.